If you want Colts talk all year long, you're in the right place.
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown. He's going to fire upfield. It's broken up, tipped, and intercepted by the Colts.
This is the official Colts podcast, giving you an updated look at what's new with the Horseshoes.
Colts have it. Interception. 2 seconds left, and the Colts are going to win.
In the Indiana Union Construction Industry radio studio, let's get the podcast started.
Welcome to the official Colts podcast. We are from the NFL Combine down here in downtown Indianapolis. JJ Stankovitz is here.
It's a special remote show.
It is a remote show.
The show is on the road.
I love the ambiance in the background.
It is kind of good. Yeah, we got the Steelers around us. The Raiders are here. We're
Panthers
budged
right
up
here.
to the Carolina Panthers.
Kitty
next
corner
door.
from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I love this. JJ, this is your time. Lara, this is your time. You guys are around here because there's so much information being passed around. And
yeah, I really have done no work. This is the first work I've done all day because I've just been talking to people from like the time I walked in the building.
That's work because you're probably getting some information.
Sure.
You're learning about what other teams are going to do.
Yeah.
You can have more informed opinions about stuff.
That's true. That's true. I was chatting with a few of my gals, Danny Rogers from the Detroit Lions, Danny Surik from the Arizona Cardinals, Tatum Everett from the Minnesota Vikings, a lot of people around.
I can tell you based on conversations with like 5 beat writers I've had here that no one's trading any wide receivers this year.
No one is trading wide receivers. See, those are the little nuggets that I like to get out of the early combine. That's what I call this the Tuesday. By Friday, we may have some drafts completed in our heads. Who knows? And JJ, any work you can do on Chris Ballard's behalf, go do it because I know a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. I hold a lot of sway when it comes to we're trying to work out a trade with the Los Angeles Chargers for Keenan Allen.
Let's
All
go.
right, yeah, I definitely can do that.
Let's go. Okay, Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, the great,
the best.
He is. He's a great guy, and he's been a scout. So we drill him every year as far as Q&A goes, and I know he's a big fan of Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen. So he's going to be coming up in a bit. We're going to swap a little stories or a few with him, but I want to go over a couple of NFL scenarios that are happening before this combine.
Everybody's going to have
started.
to excuse me and bear with me because I have to kind of pick up my mic to be able to drink my coffee.
For our
latte, Lara.
Cheers to Jay's for going out and getting the coffee today.
Good job.
For our video audience, you just saw me. It looked like I just chugged the rest of this coffee, but there was only a little left in it because I don't want to keep doing the up and down thing on the microphone here to make it look like that. So yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, let's get into the podcast.
Latte Lara is here. JJ Stankovitz. So I want to go over
freshly fueled with my latte.
We were talking about this, and there's so many people we're going to talk to in Colts Audio Network. You can find out all the great NFL draft gurus, etc. We're going to have a ton of them, over 40 guests this week on the Audio Network. But a couple of off-the-field things that happened. JJ, let me start with you. Boy, oh boy, I've never seen the salary cap bounce at the rate that it did, almost a position, if you will, a quarterback's contract, if you will, about the $30 million. I'll start with you, JJ. How does that affect things? Business in the NFL, how does that affect the Colts?
So it affects the Colts in how you are going to allocate that money now. And I think that goes to not only some of the impending unrestricted free agents you have, but maybe you start thinking about how can we budget this out, not just for 2024, but into future years.
Especially with Anthony Richardson, knowing that you're going to have to account for that down the road. Yeah. It's a luxury to have him on a rookie deal right now, but that quickly catches up to you, as we've seen. Think about just last year. It was Jonathan Taylor's rookie contract that you were having to negotiate and extend.
Just because you have $30 million of extra cap space does not mean you're going to spend $30 million more this offseason. There's stuff you can do with rollover cap. There's stuff you can do with free agent contracts, contract extensions that maybe are structured a little bit different based on it. But the thing that I've heard just from talking to people here is that the cap increase is probably going to lead more teams to hold on to their internal free agents. We really want to keep player X.
Which is good.
It is good. It's good for the league.
Yeah.
We really want to keep player X. We didn't think we could afford him, but hey, all of a sudden now we got this extra $10 million in cap space that we didn't think was going to be here. Great. This guy can stick around now. We have enough in the budget to make it work. Or we were going to have to cut this guy because we had to get under the cap, and all of a sudden, whoa, wait a minute, we don't have to do that. So it's going to make the pool of players available maybe a little bit different than what you would have expected a couple weeks ago.
Very interesting.
Lara, I want to ask you this. Free agency. So we talked about this. It's like $30 million this cap goes up and stuff like that. With somebody like Michael Pittman Jr., just as a fan up in the fifth section, is just all I'm saying. You got extra money. Do you want to put him on a franchise tag? You got no commitment to the player, but you do that. Injuries are out there and stuff like this. With this increase in the salary cap, JJ just said it, sign your own. Isn't it, hey, we don't need to franchise him. We've got enough cap space and we've got enough wiggle room that we can sign him to a well-deserved extended deal. It
does appear that this provides you some additional flexibility, right? It doesn't guarantee you or make anything any easier, right? Because there are so many complicated aspects of these long-term deals and getting those things done. But I do think it provides flexibility and maybe some more options in working out the stipulations of a potential contract extension. And, maybe this does now give you second thought as to, okay, we were leaning heavily to considering the franchise tag. Does this allow you to maybe reconsider that a little bit and evaluate maybe some other ways that you can get that deal done? Maybe it's, who we got here? Oh, hello.
It's John Greenberg from The Athletic stopping by to say hi.
Go ahead, grab a seat.
No. We don't need to hear about Justin Fields unfollowing the Bears on Instagram. Go get out of here. Go.
Can you please send us this photo?
Yeah, that's going to wind up on Twitter, at John Greenberg.
That is JJ Stankovic's fan club here because he knows so many people. Exactly. They all stop by. I love it.
I think it does provide you some flexibility. And I really do think, and this is having no inside knowledge. I mean, you guys know that we are not involved in really knowing the day-to-day conversations that are perhaps happening. But I really do think at the core of this situation, I think Michael Pittman wants to be a Colt. And I think that Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen want Michael Pittman to be a Colt. I think, though, in getting there, you have to be sure what he is being compensated is comparable and is competitive with what would be out there on the open market.
So I was talking to Brad Spielberger from Pro Football Focus, who does a great job covering free agency, covering contracts. He's going to be in an interview we're going to do later this week here on the Colts Audio Network. But I was just asking him about the franchise tag specifically. And something he said is that it usually sets kind of the floor of what a player is now going to ask for. So just keep that in mind with the Colts and the franchise tag with Michael Pittman, that it's going to set a floor for what he may be asking for when it comes to a new contract. So that part of it, it's like, is it a slam dunk that the Colts will use it? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a lot more that goes into using the franchise tag than just like, we want to keep this guy, let's use it. Yeah. Versus, we want to keep this guy, but we want to keep him at a price that works for him, works for the Colts, all parties involved in that. That doesn't always lead to you using the franchise tag. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see in the case of Pittman. We just haven't had a situation like this in Indianapolis. And I mean, the last one was Pat McAfee, and that was a punter, so like a real situation, no offense to Pat, in over a decade. Since the Colts have used the tag.
I mean, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. I mean, I was in the market when that happened, but I believe that Pat was kind of peeved about the whole situation, right? This was
it was more of a
no player wants to.
Right.
Yeah, Ryan Grigson. I mean, that's what with Pat and him butting heads and such like that. So that did come into it. Yeah,
it can create a bit of, conflict or dissension among players and the organization, dependent upon when and why that is used. And we've seen that in the past. You saw it, and then we talked about this a couple weeks ago. You saw it with the Giants and Saquon Barkley. They went through this last year before ultimately kind of reaching a deal, and it created some interesting scenarios for them in the offseason.
Oh, Shane Steichen, as we said, Chris Ballard speaking to the media tomorrow. You can find out all the latest on that.
Also, worth noting as well, Coach Steichen is going to be involved in a really awesome panel Tuesday afternoon. There's a women in football panel that is going on. Great. So there are two, I'm actually going to pull up the details of that really quickly, but just so people are aware, so you can kind of be looking out for this. But Izzy Diaz, who is the Harriet P. Irsay coaching fellow.
Coaching special teams.
She's one on the special teams coaching side. She's going to be involved in an early panel called The Future Is Now, a discussion with 12 NFL women coaches. And I mean, the names on that list really impressive because you have like Lori Locust, who is now with the Tennessee Titans, long time. I believe she was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jennifer King, who is the Bears assistant running backs coach. So great opportunity for Callie Brownson, who's doing a great job in Cleveland. And then Shane is going to be on a panel with a lot of other current and former head coaches called Leading the Charge Head Coach Champion. So Todd Bowles, John Harbaugh, Ron Rivera, Kevin Stefanski, and Coach Steichen.
Well, right on,
so
Coach.
Very, very cool.
That will be great. And a lot of things happen on the field this week. Obviously, the players will be doing their thing in a couple of days, but the medicals and all the interviews and stuff have already started. Those are going on here. I want to ask JJ, before we get into what I'm going to hear from Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard tomorrow, defensively speaking, defensively with this group right now. The reason I ask you is this team got after the quarterback last year and replaced their position coach.
Yeah.
Okay, and that happens. I get it.
Lara has something to say about Charlie Partridge.
Yeah.
Guys.
Yeah.
I had an opportunity to sit down with him right when he got in the building. These conversations are probably going to come out next week after so we'll have so much content over the course of this week for the Combine. You guys, I'm going to look directly to the camera right here. You are going to love Charlie Partridge. The fire, the passion, the love of football, the love of coaching that he has. Oh, my gosh. He is going to be a phenomenal addition to that group. I was telling him, I was like, I know you probably haven't had an opportunity to talk to a lot of guys. He's like, I've reached out to a few of them, but haven't had them yet in the building. I was like, you are inheriting a phenomenal group, and I can just tell the fit that he is going to be because he loves developing players. And here, this guy has coached for like 30 years at the college level. He was coaching J.J. Watt at Wisconsin, and then the last
Trey Hendrickson at FAU
yes,
as
and
well.
then he was just with the University of Pittsburgh.
Kalijah Cansey.
This is his first coaching role in the NFL.
Wow.
And part of the reason he waited so long because he wanted to find the right fit, and two, he loved the development of players at the college level, which is a little bit different maybe than what you're getting because it's a little bit more scheme-specific, of course, in the NFL and everything. Waited for the right opportunity, felt like this was it. You guys are going. I cannot wait for you guys to meet him.
We're going to have him on the air soon enough, Charlie Partridge. My point is, and hopefully you have an answer.
He's going to bring a new element to that group.
Which is, let's stick right there. The element to the group last year was they set a team record for sacks.
Correct.
That was not good enough in some eyes. I'm just being a fan here.
Right.
Now bring in the new defensive line. What do you want? I'm just saying, is it 77 sacks they want?
Well, okay, but here, so... And this is no disrespect to Nate Ollie.
No,
huge fan of Nate Ollie.
Huge fan, and he did an incredible job.
Did an incredible job. But the Colts were 27th in pressure rate last year.
Gotcha.
They got pressure on 32.2% of their defensive snaps. So while they were getting a lot of sacks, which is great, they were not consistently affecting the quarterback up front. And that's not, Gus Bradley likes to play. It's the four guys rushing. Doesn't blitz a lot, and when you play that way, you need the D-line to be more disruptive on a snap-to-snap basis.
Because let's be honest, you got the personnel to do it.
You have invested quite a bit into that group.
Right.
In, a first-rounder for DeForest Buckner and an extension, a first-rounder for Kwity Paye, a second-rounder for Dayo Odangbo, a pretty good chunk of change for Samson Ebukam. You've got guys in there with a lot of talent.
We'll see what happens with Grover Stewart this offseason as we're talking about free agents.
Right. So that pressure rate needs to be...
I don't think you can afford to lose.
Right. Yeah, but what I'm more saying is to Jeffrey's question, that pressure rate's got to get up.
Yeah.
That's what it has to do. If you're going to play that 4 down, get after the quarterback with those guys, you got to have a higher pressure rate than that.
Okay, we're going to find out. What do you guys think? Lara, I'm going to start with you. What are they going to ask Steichen tomorrow? What are they going to ask Chris Ballard tomorrow? The top things. Is it all Michael Pittman Jr.?
No,
what they're doing with that?
I think you're going to get a lot of questions about some of what we've seen on social media with Anthony Richardson posting videos that he's been throwing.
Nice.
And not just, throwing a tennis ball or, whatever, or a Nerf ball. Like, he is throwing a football from what we have seen via his Instagram, his social media, and then some from his agent as well. So he's kind of put some things out there. There is going to be intrigue about where Anthony is in the recovery process. I think I don't know if it's 1A, 1B maybe, but I think those are kind of going to be two of the bigger things when you hear from Coach Steichen that are going to be a couple of questions directed his way specifically about, I think, those two guys. Because I do and to go back a couple of weeks, when we had the opportunity to sit down with Anthony Richardson prior to when he met with the media, he was so optimistic, so hungry, so encouraged, and it was great to feel, that from him, that this eagerness to get back out there and all that, which you would expect. But he also, you could tell, was in a spot where he also knew that he had to be cautious. He had to listen to certain direction on how he was progressing, how much he's doing, all of those things. So now it's been, a month and a half since that conversation.
So those questions are coming.
And we had heard, I believe, and, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I think that maybe he had said something about throwing in March, was maybe something that had been tossed around out there. People had, kind of deduced based on when his surgery was, what the recovery was from that would kind of be pinpointed. And then, where is he going to be when he comes back for OTAs and all of that. So those are a couple of things I think that people will be interested to know about when you talk to Shane. And then I think a lot of the conversation to Chris is going to be on certainly those free agents.
You know what's nice is
not to have a head coaching change at this point.
Not to have a head coaching change or have any question about who the quarterback is going to be.
Yeah, that's
last
so
year.
True. Gardner Minshew is going to have some questions, right?
We'll have a
what's
question
the
about
priority on re-signing him?
Last year, when Chris Ballard was at the podium here at the Indiana Convention Center, 16 of the 17 questions that were posed to him were about quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then there was one that was kind of like loosely about quarterbacks. To Shane Steichen, 14 of 28 questions were about quarterbacks. I'm doing stats here on press conferences. That's where you're on the offseason.
So, but still, it still could be 14 this year because of what Lara just said.
It could be,
a
but
small
it's
sample
not,
size
but
from Anthony.
It's about, okay, how do you build around him now? Mm-hmm. You know who the guy is. How do you build around him? What do you need to accentuate in his skill set with this roster? So when I went back and I was looking up stuff for this segment, I went all the way back. I have not covered an NFL Combine where the team I'm covering knows who their quarterback is going to be and there aren't any questions about him going into a season since 2018.
Wow, welcome.
When I came to the NFL Combine here in Indianapolis, and it was all about how do you build around Mitch Trubisky.
Right.
That's what I was going to be. I was like, what, were we Jay Cutler era at that point in time?
Then the year after, I was like, well, what about the year after? And the year after,
Santa Claus, Indiana's finest.
Yeah, Holiday World. Love Holiday World.
Yeah, should.
The year after then was every single question was about Cody Parkey and who the Bears kicker was going to be. So that was kind of I threw that one out. But I think there are some things that we might learn, just little crumbs that might get dropped here. Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen are not going to give away the plan or the blueprint for the offseason. But you might hear, something here or there that you could go back to, regarding not just Michael Pittman, but about the kind of players, the types of players that you need to build around Anthony Richardson. When Daniel Jeremiah talked about this, when we had him on, which is going to come up here in the podcast here. But it was a really interesting answer about two different ways you can build around Anthony Richardson. And maybe just get a crumb or two that you go back to in a couple of weeks when the Colts go and make, move X. And go back to and say, oh, yeah, maybe that was, a little hint at what they were going to do.
Just to remind everyone, too, who may not be aware of this, Daniel Jeremiah has a very interesting perspective on Shane Steichen because Daniel does a ton of work with the Chargers and their broadcasts and radio networks. So he is well familiar with Shane going back to the early part of his career when Shane was with the Chargers organization. So he's had a front row seat to Shane's development, going from, an assistant coach to a coordinator, then to a head coach, and then those quarterbacks and, those offensive players who he worked with when he was part of the Chargers, including Justin Herbert. So, and that's one of the things that Daniel and I talked about during training camp when he was there with NFL Network is he kind of laughed because he's like, oh my God, I'm seeing Shane Steichen and Gus Bradley on a football field together. I feel like I'm, I'm back in San Diego right now.
Speaking of those connections, when Casey Valiant and I had Benjamin Solak on, who you wind up using for the podcast next week. Really good chat with him from The Ringer. And at the end of it, he kind of takes his headphones off, and he's a Philly guy, and he goes, hey, can we have Shane back?
Wow, okay.
I have heard this from so many people.
Yeah.
Yes, I have heard that exact same thing. Also, a little applause here for Ben Solak because big news this week in the NFL world. Peter King announces his retirement.
Sure did.
So we will not see him here at the Combine. One of the absolute best, hands down, to, have ever been in the league as a journalist, as a reporter. But at the very end of his column, he, notes and gives regards to a few kind of up-and-coming reporters and writers in the league, Ben Solak among them, his great work with The Ringer.
Nice.
So.
Well,
speaking of
I don't know if
Philly,
you could get a higher accolade than that.
That's
right?
like getting, tapped by,
I don't need a Pulitzer. Give me the Peter King nod.
Right, exactly. But going back to Philly, though, so a question for Shane tomorrow is, how about Alex Tanney coming in as passing game coordinator? A position that was not on this staff last year that now you've gone and you got Tanney from Philly, where he was there last year as our quarterbacks coach. A guy who was in Indianapolis for a quick minute.
As a quarterback.
Quarterback.
one thing. Oh, sorry, JJ.
No. I mean, it was just like, what are we going to hear about Alex Tanney and what his role is going to be within this offense?
One thing I learned, so I talked about the great conversation with Charlie Partridge, looking forward to everyone hearing, but had Alex Tanney as well, and then Justin Hamilton, and you guys will hear all of these interviews coming up over the next few weeks. But I didn't realize that in addition to Alex Tanney and Shane having the rapport in Philadelphia, Alex was a quarterback with Shane when Shane was coaching early in his career with Cleveland.
Wow. With Cleveland when Shane was a defensive assistant, if I'm correct?
I can't remember what Shane's exact title was, but when I sat down with Alex, he said that was really what he and Shane created their rapport on was back in the Cleveland days. So this goes back a while to these two guys and their approach to, the offense, approach to the passing game, and all of that. So really great conversation, right?
Almost as good of a connection as Shane Steichen working as a grad assistant with DeAndre Smith at UNLV.
Yeah,
the Colts'
that's
current
so
running
much
back.
fun.
Whatever it takes.
I love.
You never know you're going to run into.
I know.
Okay, also, I want to give a quick I'm sorry, I'm all over the place today. I can blame it on the coffee. I want to go back. This was released just a few weeks ago on the anniversary of Shane's hire. But speaking of connections and relationships and all of that, if you guys have not had an opportunity, all of our audience there, Colts Productions released an exclusive look at the dynamic, the relationship between Shane Steichen and his high school receiver, former Colts receiver, Austin Collie.
That's right.
So really fun. Talks about their dynamic and building that friendship through high school. A couple of notes from that: when Austin went to the Super Bowl with the Colts during his rookie season.
That was a good one.
He actually called Shane a couple days before and said, hey, if you can make it out here, I got a ticket for you. So Shane was a grad assistant at UNLV at that time, boarded a flight. He said, whatever cheapest flight he could find. Got there and he's like, hey, do you have a hotel room for me? I think he ended up sleeping on the floor of Austin's brother's room so he could be there when Austin appeared at the Super Bowl, because that was their shared dream.
Wow.
And then too, the guys would, and I don't think I told this story, did I? I'm not sure. I'm going back a couple podcasts, but when they were in high school, neither of them were they would go to parties just to be social, but they weren't really about going to parties. So they would always wear their gym shorts underneath their jeans, kept their football and their cleats in their car. And so they'd go say hi to their friends for 20 minutes of the party and they'd be like, hey, you ready to go? And they'd go out and they'd find a field, fire up the lights. And they would throw on a Saturday night instead of
when I did a story on this last year, I talked to Austin and then the high school coach who was like, I just trusted him enough to give him the keys to the lights at the high school. And he was like, never got a call of parents complaining, hey, why are the lights on at midnight?
They do things differently.
It's fun. It's about an 8.5 minute piece or so.
And it's such a cool look at how those two guys knew they were going to be great from a very young age.
Okay, now I'll tell you something that Shane told us afterwards. Because I think Austin says it was like a naive confidence or something. That's the way he described it. And Shane goes, okay, that was Austin. Austin knew he was going to make it. I'm like, yeah, I hope I get there someday.
Yeah. Austin knew Shane was going to make it somehow.
So Shane, I think Shane was much more. I don't know if it's realistic or a little more toned down. He wasn't quite as bold. Austin was like, oh no, I'm going to go play. I'm going to be a wide receiver in the NFL. Shane's like, yeah, I'd like to coach football.
Yeah.
You like these stories? That's what these two bring you. Lara Overton, JJ Stankovitz, I'm Jeffrey Gorman. Guys, I love this stuff. I want to get to Daniel Jeremiah right now, but we're going to have some more time on the backside of that one. So, from the NFL Network, from right here at the NFL Combine, let's take a minute and say hello to Daniel Jeremiah. We welcome in Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network, the lead draft analyst. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at MoveTheSticks. NFL Network provides live coverage of the 2024 NFL Scouting Combine Thursday through Sunday. Coverage starts at 3 p.m. on Thursday and Friday and at 1 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And you are busy. This is Christmas for you this time of year, Daniel Jeremiah. I appreciate you being here. I want to talk quarterbacks. I didn't see a couple weeks ago 4 possibly going in the top 15, now top 10 picks. Did you see this? When did it make its way out? And are those legit guys that are going to move that quick?
Well, I think it's a combination. You do have some legit dudes, especially. I mean, the top 3 are going. That's happening. That's not. I don't think that's up for debate now. It's, do we get a 4th? Do we potentially get a 5th? And I think it's a couple different things. With Bo Nix has had his kind of sponsors throughout this process, teams that have liked him through the fall and into the spring. J.J. McCarthy's the one that's kind of come up lately because, as I've said, he's kind of like an acquired taste. When you watch Michigan and you're just passively watching him, you're like, what does this guy do? I mean, come on, they run the ball and they play defense, and he gets to go along for the ride. But then when you dig in, the more you watch, the more you and you see the things he can do. And so you have the players that warrant the conversation. And then you also have the number of teams that just happen to be in the QB market, and whether or not they absolutely don't have one, or whether or not they don't, they're not in love with one, like Daniel Jones with the Giants, or you've got, like the Kirk Cousins thing. Who could foresee that he was going to tear his Achilles, and that maybe they could be a quarterback team? So, yeah, for the teams that don't need quarterbacks, they're loving this right now.
Right. The Colts are sitting at 15. And it feels like every draft there are, 10 to 12 players who have like true first-round grades, right? If there are 4 quarterbacks go off the board, then theoretically maybe that could push one of those guys down to the Colts at 15. But when you look at that kind of middle of the draft, where is the depth, where is the talent, what positions could be available to the Colts at 15? I know you had them taking Nate Wiggins, the corner out of Clemson, in your last mock.
Yeah, I think you could get a chance to be near the front of a couple runs. So, we'll see the pass rusher run will probably start a little bit before then. But I think the corner run where they're positioned, there's a good shot to be there on the corner run. And I'm fascinated, too, on, the tackles because it's so deep. There'll be quality players there. But to me, there's 3 elite pass rushers. And I think in a normal draft at pick 15, you're probably not going to see one of those guys. I think because the quarterbacks get pushed up, I think there's a chance you see one of those top 3 pass rushers. And then, the Bowers thing is kind of its own discussion just because of, the position and things of that sort. But he's, obviously one of the top 10 players in the draft.
Yeah, so let's have that Bowers discussion because you had him at 18 to the Bengals.
Yeah.
But I believe he's in your top 10
on
your big board. What about that position and the skill set that Brock Bowers has would lead him to be a top 10 player who maybe does not go in the top 10 of the draft?
Yeah, it's complicated, and a lot of it, it's layered. You've got the financial component where you're not getting much of a bargain because the number is $12 million is the franchise number for tight ends. So if I can go out and I look at my board and I'm trying to build my roster within the salary cap, and I have a receiver number that's $21 million. And then I've got a tight end number that's $12 million. I got a corner number that's $19, $20 million. And I'm sitting there going, well, wait a second. I'm going to pay whoever I pick the exact amount of money. So if I pay the receiver, I just saved all this money. And if I pick the tight end, I'm almost paying top of the market dollars for a rookie. I'm not even getting the benefit of the rookie deal. That's part of it. That's not all of it. The other side of it is when you look at tight ends that have been picked high, the impact has not been huge. Kyle Pitts is a tough one because Kyle Pitts is as talented as any tight end I've ever evaluated.
Do teams pay attention to that? Do the teams
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and people will say this is the thing I find funny is that the pushback is, well, if you look at the best teams in the NFL, they all have great tight ends. So why would you not take why would you not take a tight end? I go, yeah, where did they get those tight ends? Not in the first round.
Yep.
Laporta wasn't a first-round pick last year.
No. Day 2, day 3.
You can find those guys in day 2 and day 3. So that's kind of the other side of that argument.
Daniel Jeremiah from the NFL Network. Stay there. I heard you earlier talking about the depth of the wide receiver position, the group here in this draft. Are you getting starting quality guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th round of this draft? Is it that heavy at the wide receiver position?
I would say you get into the 4th round, I feel pretty good. I
really?
think going beyond the 4th round, okay, maybe you're maybe rolling the dice a little bit. Sure. But it's a position that's the college game just continues to spit these guys out, man. It's every year.
You're a scout. Come on.
Yeah.
In a situation like Ballard's looking at, you got Anthony Richardson, offensive pieces galore. Yeah. Where are they? Then you're sitting there and you got a quality wide receiver, but you have Higgins going, for instance. Is there a possibility of it when you make your draft, you say best available, or does Ballard say, no, I'm going after an offensive position here, my guy's there?
Yeah, I think to me it's the whole best player available or need, you know. And I've always laughed. I said every team they combine it. Every single team tries to find the best player available at a position of need. And if they don't match up, you get the heck out of there and you trade and say, okay, well, let me get back where I'm a little more comfortable making this decision. So that's when I think that Chris is like this, in terms of being flexible and creative. And I feel like this whole new generation of GMs is like this. It's why the draft has gotten more fun to broadcast, to be honest with you, because some of the old guard was strict and stringent of, we were picking 10, and we're going to pick 10, and we're going to spend all offseason studying the top 10 players. Whereas this younger generation, last year we saw Arizona move back and then come back up. Like you can maneuver around the board a little bit to try and find your value.
You've been in these rooms. You've studied how teams operate. When you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, and something Chris Ballard told us when he was on our podcast in November is that we know how to build around him, even though he started 4 games. With his specific skill set, does that change how you evaluate players, knowing who you're dropping into that offense with Anthony Richardson, or do you have to stick to kind of here are our parameters? regardless of who's playing quarterback for us.
You better build it around your quarterback. I mean, any smart team would do that. What does he do well? What complements him well? It was one of the things that I said about Tua when he went to the Dolphins was Tua played with a track team at Alabama. Mm-hmm. And so that it's about speed and space, and then let him be able to navigate around that. And that's, you look at what he was early in his career, then all of a sudden you have Waddle emerge, you trade for Tyreek Hill, and he looks like a different player because they properly built the team around the skill set of the quarterback. So, I'm curious with Anthony Richardson to see kind of what that looks like and what their vision is for him and how that will play around him. Because you could make an argument of, okay, we've got kind of a big bully at quarterback. Do we just try and just be a big team and then let him, kind of do his thing and run away from everybody and make plays? Or do we say, man, with his athleticism, if we can get a bunch of speed and we can create all this space and expand the defense, now look at all the room Anthony's going to have to operate. So I'm curious to see what their vision for him is with those surrounding pieces.
Follow him on Twitter X and Instagram at Move the Sticks, the best in the business, Daniel Jeremiah. What's going on? These guys aren't throwing. Some of these top guys aren't running right now. Do you see this as, in the next couple of years, the combine shifting gears a little bit with the elite?
Well, I think we've seen that. I did a study on it, and we'll probably talk about it on the broadcast of like the quarterbacks who have and haven't thrown. And I went into the process saying I'm going to be able to look at this and say, see, like last year C.J. Stroud threw, and he put on a show, and he had a great rookie year. And I went back through and like over the last 10 years, and I'm like, okay, it's like 50-50. Like some of the top, like Joe Burrow's not throwing, and this guy is throwing, and it's like there's no correlation between whether or not you threw or didn't throw and what kind of success that you had. But to me, look, I've always said you're not going to hurt yourself. We understand you're throwing to guys you don't know who they are, what they're doing, and so I just want to see you move around, see the ball come out of your hand, and then those teams will get the opportunity. I was talking to an agent for one of these guys, and he said, look, I've got private workouts scheduled with every team picking in the top 10. Yep. Like he's going to throw 5 different times, one-on-one, running the routes they want to run with their receivers. Like, what? And I'm like, okay, I get it. But it is an opportunity for these other guys that get to go out there and throw to kind of to show what they can do with the guys that don't have the 5 workouts already lined up.
Sure. What number combine is this for you?
So my first one was 2002. That's a lot. Golly.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever given someone or received about the NFL Combine?
The best piece of advice I've given somebody or received. Well, I always I tell guys this every year, players, to bring their notebooks to the interview room. And so, in other words, you'd be surprised how dumb some of the questions can be. But like, hey, how much do you love football? Scale of 1 to 10. Right. And everybody, I love football. I work harder than everybody else. And I tell these players, I'm like, look, you can say that, but what if you just reach down into your bag and say, here's the notes from this season that I took watching tape. And see this is how that's how much I care. Yeah. That's how much I love football right there. So that's the kind of stuff I like trying to help those kids out with that stuff.
Great stuff. Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network. You're busy, obviously, with the coverage coming up at Thursday through Sunday. Follow them on Twitter, X, and Instagram at Move the Sticks. Last one for me, and I'll let you go. These owners around the NFL, sometimes they snatch somebody on TV, on air, right out of the booth, general managers, head coaches included. If someone taps on your shoulder, Jeremiah, are you ready for a GM job?
The only GM job that I'm after right now is the Padres, and I think A.J. Preller hopefully has a better year, and he keeps it. So that's
get a good return for Juan Soto.
We got a lot of arms. We'll find out if they're any good.
We'll see. I'm a White Sox fan, so I can't even talk baseball right now.
Well, hey, thanks for Fernando, by the way.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, James Shields worked out great. Awesome.
Daniel Jeremiah right there from the NFL Network. Thanks so much. All right, great stuff from Daniel Jeremiah. Obviously a busy man this week. Lara, I'm going to throw you a curveball. You know I love doing this. Mm-hmm. But this week, with the Combine upon us and the NFL Draft just right around the corner, for the first time in a while, we talked about different things. I think the offensive line of this Indianapolis Colts offense, led by Quentin Nelson, we know what's coming out next year, I think, across the board. This is just me talking as a fan. I think those 5 positions are filled.
Yeah.
Where do we go with this draft specifically for depth on the offensive line, if any? Because, I'm sorry to say this, but I think about it, Jonathan Taylor, big money. Anthony Richardson, bigger money. I know literally not, but as far as importance goes and stuff like that. So you've got those guys who are well paid. 3 of the 5 are very, very well paid, and then 2 are on rookie contracts.
Wow. JJ, I feel like you got something.
Your needs right now are not your needs next year.
Okay.
And that is a way that a lot of teams operate when it comes to the NFL draft. Usually in the first round, second round, maybe even into the third round, you're looking for immediate contributors. And then when you get into the fourth round, you start thinking about who's a really good player. Or maybe you start thinking even into the third round. Right now, do we need this guy? No, but we might next year. And that's where you start seeing some moves that you go, why is that team taking that guy?
Gotcha.
I do think the Colts, in terms of depth, you like what you got in terms of experience out of Blake Freeland this year. Always a guy who the Colts drafted knowing he was going to need time to develop. He's going to need time to gain strength, to grow into his body. But a really athletic guy, you can play both right and left tackle. And like Chris Ballard said in his postseason press conference, not dissimilar to Bernard Ryman in his rookie year.
Sure.
So you already, I think you have some built-in depth with your swing tackle. Interior depth is going to be interesting. Do you maybe start thinking about maybe we go get someone in that role who can play guard and or center potentially? You're set right there. Like we are the foremost appreciators of Will Fries, I think.
Sure.
No question.
Love Will Fries.
Love.
And Ryan Kelly and Quentin Nelson, both Pro Bowlers. You're not thinking about what's next for them. But you do need some depth, and the Colts did have really good health at both guard positions. Fries and Nelson didn't miss a game.
For sure. Braden Smith on the other side. Well,
right. So where do you kind of think about our depth concerns going forward? I don't know what the depth of the offensive line draft is this year, if it's an interior, if it's with tackles, if it's centers. But, yeah, I think that's something that I'm certain the Colts are thinking about because you have to be thinking a year ahead at this point.
And, interestingly, I believe Danny Pinter is a free agent, right?
Yep,
when
true.
you're talking about the depth there, you got really good play from Wesley French last season. I'm curious, obviously he started at center when Ryan Kelly was out. What is his versatility?
Right, could he play guard?
Could he play guard, right, with a guy who you have in the building? So those are kind of some interesting guys to kind of watch and see what happens over this offseason, as well, what the opportunity is for each of them. Now, I don't think Ryan Kelly is going anywhere anytime soon by any means.
And you certainly hope he's not
because
he's a really good player.
Right,
yeah.
Right. And, I love Emma Kelly so much, so they better not go anywhere.
They better not go anywhere. Ryan, if you're listening, stay put. Good position to be in, though. That's what I'm gathering from this. We're in a nice position off-season as far as the offensive line goes.
And the other thing I think you need to remember with the draft is there are very few players on a roster who you would just kind of wave a wand and say, yeah, we're not taking a guy at that position. I think the Colts right now, you have Jonathan Taylor, a running back. You're probably not taking a running back in the first round. You're not taking a quarterback in the first round. Beyond that, if you identify someone and you're like, this guy is the next Hall of Fame comparison, there's not much that would stop you from taking that guy. I mean, and that's not a slight at anyone on the roster. It's more like you have to operate that way because you don't know what your team is going to look like in 2025.
And you had Marlon Mack and you drafted Jonathan Taylor.
Sure.
And now, obviously, Marlon Mack did not go on to be, he wasn't the league leading rusher or anything in a season, but he was a very productive, good player. Right. So you just think about, that was a handful of years ago. That was 4 years ago, and you look at how quickly, things change and transpire. And when you drafted Pitt, you still had T.Y. Hilton.
Right. What if you get to the second round and you're like, we think this guy's, Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's sitting there. Could you still take him?
Right.
To pair with Jonathan Taylor is kind of that different weapon. You're not taking a 3-down running back.
I'm okay with that, but I also kind of don't want that because I also selfishly want Zach Moss back, too.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Again, you don't know. Yeah.
I want everybody back. I want to spend all the money.
Right. Here's the other thing that we talked about on the pod last week is free agency is going to kind of tell us where some things are going to go. If the Colts bring back Zach Moss, I would say it's unlikely they would take a running back on day 2.
Right.
But
if they don't, can they find a Zach Moss type of a replacement as a rookie?
You would probably look for it.
And you look at the tight end room.
Yep.
What can you do? What does this draft look like at the tight end position? Obviously, people are very high on Brock Bowers, and he is kind of the one who has separated himself. But what's the depth behind him? I believe he's projected to be kind of a top 10-ish pick, perhaps.
So, when we're talking to Daniel Jeremiah, he's got him in his top 10, but has him projected going 18 to the Bengals as a guy who could just kind of slip. And there's something like that Jeremiah conversation was really interesting because he brought up teams are a little bit scared off by seeing what happened with Kyle Pitts, where he went 4th overall. He was this can't-miss athletic freak prospect. But it didn't really work out the way that you would want the number 4 overall pick.
I'm also going to say, too, that's likely in part due to their quarterback situation.
It is, but again, if you're going to take a tight end that high, you have to.
And that's all going to change this year based on what they did. So
if you're going to take a quarterback that high, you've got to have, or a tight end that high, you've got to have a plan for him.
You do.
And that's something else that it's kind of interesting that we've learned here.
Eddie White, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, hey,
Eddie White. Yeah. So.
Coming by saying hi to Jeffrey Gorman over here. But no, I think that part of it too. Like you look at this, you could take a wide receiver, a tight end. Maybe you're not taking a left guard in the first round, but if you took an offensive lineman in the first round, that would probably be a surprise. But would it be a drop-dead shock? Not like taking a quarterback or a running back would be,
How many times? I mean, I've been a part of so many of these off-season series that we have done and talking with Chris. We know that they are going to draft based on not necessarily need. It is on best player available.
Exactly, right.
That is what it is. It's on the best player available because he always talks about you don't want to reach for a guy. So
because if you reach for someone who is a need right now, he's probably going to create another need later.
Right.
That's a really good point.
What a big gamble that is. Hey, so much more to be answered from the NFL Combine here down.
That was a good curveball.
That was.
That was like we're talking like a little 12-6 Yacker Mike Mussina action on that.
Didn't see the offensive line coming up here. What else do I got for you here? We got some lunch coming up on behalf of Dave Knickerbocker. We are. We got to give Dave a shout out if he's paying for the Italian sub. So
That's right.
Thank you.
You know what I got on my my Potbelly? Got some jardinera on it.
Yeah, no way.
Yep.
Same.
That's the hot peppers.
Oh, yeah.
Save it.
It's the best.
Save it. No, I got everything but on
We've been promised Shapiro's on this podcast, and we're not getting Shapiro's today.
I promise you, people, we'll be talking about Shapiro's, and we're going to take care of Lara Overton, JJ Stankovitz, Colin, our friend, Matt Taylor here, Casey Valier. Everybody's going to be having it.
Really quickly, just a shout out to the city of Indianapolis and the hosting.
Yes.
Because you think about in the last few weeks, the All-Star game, unbelievable, even though it snowed and all of that. But then this week with the Combine, everyone around here who comes in just talks about how incredible Indianapolis is, how wonderful the people are. So everyone who has a hand in, working at the hotels and the restaurants and driving all the Ubers and, working at the airport and doing all of that, all of your hard work is noticed and appreciated by the hundreds, thousands of people who come in this week for the Combine.
Love
and
it.
I know people have been working their butts off with so many events, and there are going to be tournament games coming up as well. So just shout out to everybody around here, downtown, everyone who makes this such an incredible event.
Do you want to know why the Combine is such a well put together event? Media members, as someone who has been in outside media when I worked for Comcast and NBC, love to complain about travel stuff, accommodations, restaurants, transportation.
I complain about it anytime I go anywhere else. So yes.
Well, right, but
just not here. Right?
No one loves to do it with a platform like media members complain. Like you could go on any media member's Twitter account and you could find their list of least favorite airports very easily. No one complains about the Combine. It's always just, what a great event. Please keep it here.
Yeah.
I would die if the Combine left Indianapolis or maybe not come.
Shout out to Chris Gall and the entire staff. Visit Indy, everybody. I know Chris is going to be, coming by and having a sit down. Just one of the best. His whole team. Everyone. I don't want to get into doing too many names because I'll leave somebody out.
We'll have over 40 different NFL guests here on the Colts Audio Network by the time Friday, Saturday, Sunday rolls around. So it is going to be busy. And as usual, Colts.com has your latest information. At JJ Stankovitz, at Lara Overton on Twitter X. Give me one.
Each of you a curvevball.
Give me one. Give me one.
Person you are most looking forward to seeing this week at the Combine.
He just arrived. Edward White. He just walked in here.
No.
The Pacers PR guy, the marketing man, the guru.
That's it. That's who you're going
That's
with.
who it is. It's Eddie White. He's been here since, the first Combine in '82, I'm sure.
I don't have a single person, but every year at the Combine, my friends who I covered the Bears with, we have our annual Jeff Dickerson Memorial Dinner at St. Elmo's.
That's wonderful.
Because JD, every Combine would organize a big dinner at St. Elmo's. He'd get the wine. You have steak. You'd be out. You had a great time. And his rule was, we're not talking ball.
Good.
We're talking about anything but ball.
Anything but ball. Great taste in wine. The old prisoner.
The prisoner, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. We're gonna hit up Elmo's on Wednesday.
That's awesome.
Have a good dinner.
Well done, and a great tradition that you guys are continuing in his honor. That's awesome. So, Elo, what do you got for me before we say goddbye and get back to this?
I think that's it. That was
who's your favorite?
My favorite? It's so many, but one person I have to give a shout out to along the same lines as you're talking about Chicago people. But the most most successful Indiana Hoosier in attendance, Courtney Cronin, representing for all of the IU people, doing incredible things at ESPN on all of the platforms, TV, radio.com, all of it.
The only beat writer here who's like an around the horn champion, right?
It's around the yeah. Like she does it all, but she hosts an event, Women of the NFL. She does a happy hour, and she is just an absolute rock star and one of the best human beings. So there are so many different people I'm excited for, but mainly her, because I just like always hope that I'll absorb her greatness by osmosis.
She oozes,
like, just stand closer to me, give me all the secrets and what you do, because she's just incredible. And yeah, she's a Hoosier gal.
Awesome.
So, love that.
All right, so much more to happen over the course of the next couple of days. And again, Colts.com, at Lara Overton, at JJ Stankovitz. I'm Jeffrey Gorman. We're going to bring you more because there's so much more that's going to be happening. And this is just the Tuesday edition of the official Colts podcast. But more to come. Be sure to check out the Colts Audio Network. For Lara Overton and JJ Stankovitz, I'm Jeffrey Gorman. We'll talk to you soon, folks, from here at Lucas Oil Stadium.